Hello everyone, this is Eric Beal. I am back again with an exciting series this time in partnership with Torrance Art Museum. The Artscene has been privileged to be able to interview some artists for upcoming shows that will be on view at the museum. And today I am bringing you my conversation that I had with Tania Salha. She is an artist based in London, creating really multidisciplinary works. Tania works in film, sculpture, painting, sketches, installation, pretty much everything. As you'll hear in our conversation, she goes into great detail on really the meanings behind it, as well as her involvement in this specific show at the Torrance Art Museum called Special Relationships. This is a really neat show that is bringing together artists from London and Los Angeles and sort of pairing them together in a way where their work has a conversation with one another about creative concerns and outcomes across the two vibrant cultural landscapes. So it's a great show that opens on June 14th. It runs through July 26th. As always, Torrance Art Museum is free to visit, but donations are certainly encouraged and welcome. Without further ado, here is my conversation with Tania Salha.
For the past, 5 years, I've been interested in the concept of change and transformation. I worked on a previous series called Creatures of Habit. Mm-hmm. At the time, I was exploring how habits or habits in life, or if you think about it on a wider spectrum, like political systems, we create habits or systems to create some kind of a change, and but then that habit or that system becomes the same thing that stop us from changing later on. It becomes the main thing that holds us back. So that was previous series. I think the latest series that I'm working on, I call the Portal series. It's about thinking, what about if change is best if it happens really fast? So it's not a slow adaptation, but it's more like an instant change. And for that to happen, I thought about stepping into a totally new environment. So this is when a change could happen, when you're totally removed from the environment that you're in, and you're in totally new environment. So that ruptures that could happen could be like the thing that makes change happens really quickly. And so I was exploring that kind of a change with this series. That's why I called it the Portal series. So it's a physical transportation from one place to a totally new environment. And this series, I think one of the pieces that I could talk about is Ubik. Mm-hmm. In that piece, I was trying to capture the state of chaos or the state of disorientation that happens when you first step into a new environment. Mm-hmm. There is 3 parts to it. One part is you're very alert and scanning the environment that you're in and trying to record that space and, very alert. And there is another part of you that is projecting all your past experiences and your fears into the new space. It's like adding a layer of familiar to an unfamiliar space. And then there's that part of you that is uncontrollable, is wiggly, is chaotic, and it's like gut-twisting feeling, that doesn't know what it's doing. It just reflects the state of being unanchored, just landed in a space that has transformed as you landed. It's very disorientating. Yeah. So this is I think that piece was like a map, like a psychological map somehow of of the fragmentation that happens in that moment.
Yeah. So I think, the Portal series that you have, when I first looked at it, I even wrote down kind of how it made me feel. Like the feeling was like another dimension is trying to reach out and communicate. But once I read your description of the Portal series, you stated it's as if stepping through a threshold into a different reality. So it's, the sort of feel that same feeling you're able to capture really well with the Portal series. I found it interesting too because one of the themes in your work is transformation and change on the individual level, but specifically this piece that you have at the Torrance Art Museum, um, it's almost like you're kind of taking a different perspective on what transformation is. You've described it as like that wanting to transform, but having sort of an emotional stasis, as you said.
Exactly. This piece is a bit different than the rest of the portals. As in the rest of the portals, I was really trying to talk about a physical transportation, teletransportation kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
And this one, I think I was going through a phase where I felt like I'm going in a loop and I'm not going anywhere.
Okay.
And while the promise of change in the previous pieces delivered on that change, you have been transported. In this one, the promise failed, so it becomes it's more a mental construct of a space, of an escape space. Rather than physical transportation.
Right.
As a child, I grew up by the Mediterranean Sea, so the sound of the sea was my escape, a place I can disappear into.
Sure.
So this piece mimic the sound of waves, mimic the bubble, the foam bubble of the sea, the tension of the sea, but never the release of it.
Right.
So
okay.
it mentally transports you somewhere, but it physically does not take you anywhere.
Yeah.
So, and it's hypnotic. It turns on itself, but at the same time, it fails to deliver the promise of change. It's exactly the opposite. It becomes a holding pattern instead.
I noticed too that kind of in your history, it seems that sometimes you will join a program and take a step back to almost reapproach your work in almost a from what I can tell, kind of educational pursuit, really analyzing what you're doing. Do you think there's something in your background and your story that gives you this insight where you're really wanting to investigate and rethink what you're doing?
I realized over the years that the way I work, as in I jump between projects, and within one project, I would do a painting and then take that painting into a sculpture and then move that sculpture and then film that sculpture and then project that sculpture into an installation. So I felt like I feel safety in movement.
Oh, okay.
And that's something I think that comes from my background.
Yeah.
So I think moving between a place to another or a medium to another gives you, or gives me at least, a different perspective to the same matter. And that helps me get to connect the dots that I'm trying to explore in the piece.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's great. I really like the taking a step back to some of the previous work, the Creature of Habit series, the camouflage piece, which is, it incorporates, these telescopic tripods, right? And it has very neon pigmented top juxtaposed with this, unfired clay, just natural material. Could you describe sort of your approach in using color for these things? It feels like it's evoking that same sort of, desire for change or desire to be seen.
Camouflage is a very personal piece for me.
Mm-hmm.
I also work in the film industry. So at the time, I was working on a film that involves a lot of post-production and creating CGI environment. And to do this, they use tripods and they put tennis balls attached with gaffer tape, neon colors.
Uh-huh.
And I took, I think, inspiration from there. And at the time I was working between few productions and preparing for a show at the same time. And they're two totally different worlds. Yeah. And at that time, everything became so confused between the two worlds for me. So I took elements from that world and elements from worlds, the world, the art world that I was working in. I was working with unfired clay. I was working with wood, and I put them in that creature. I called it the camouflage because I felt like I'm constantly a camouflage between the two worlds, living there, but having the colors of the space that I'm there. And then when I'm here, I'm having the colors of that space that I'm there.
Right.
So, yeah. So, and I realized that became a habit that I'm living and it's holding me back from change. And this is what it's part of creatures of habit. So it's the habit of being able to transform from a person to another according to the environment that you're in.
Yeah. So the Portal series then is kind of, does it feel like a birth from the Creature of Habit series?
So yeah, so the work comes as accumulation from thing to thing. And then when I feel like the topic has changed totally, for me, just a way of, referring to the work. I call them in series, but it's always a continuous work of previous work. Some things fall into the bunch and it's like a snowball and it fills up more. But then once it takes a totally different direction, I start calling it something totally different.
Right.
Yeah, but it's always a build-up of the work that is before.
You create when you're trying to process an emotion or, something that's come up. You're also working on multiple works at the same time and doing different projects. So when you approach something like Take Me to the Seven Seas, what is the emotional feeling? Do you process everything before, or are you processing while you're creating the work?
I'm processing while I'm creating the work.
Mm-hmm.
And I start with something. I have something in my mind, but where I end up is something totally different.
Mm-hmm.
The work directs itself to what the material can do, what material can work with. You get to a problem and then you need to solve it, and there's certain ways to solve it, and then you learn new ways to solve it, and the new ways takes you into new material exploration. It's like a constant challenge and a constant and then some material does not deliver what I'm trying to say, so I take it out, and then so there's that process of putting in and taking out and changing the qualities and the function of the objects or the material, and giving it a new function and new meanings. And
so the work itself has very personal feelings for you. Do you feel like you're wanting to translate that feeling to other people, or are you wanting people to experience a portal and examine something that they're also experiencing that's that similar emotion?
I think everyone sees work from their own perspective.
Mm-hmm.
and adding my perspective to it might reduce the connection of or their relationship with the piece. And I think that's not fair for the piece,
Yeah,
not
yeah,
for me, because now the piece has its own life. It has its own, um, it creates its own meaning for every individual.
right.
I think sometimes adding my perspective to it could add to their perspective.
Yeah.
I want it to be an invitation to explore the same feelings that I was
Hmm.
having.
Hmm.
And I hope I did that, because when we started the interview, you told me that you had these
Yeah.
unsettling feelings. So it made me really happy.
Yeah.
So I think that's what I'm aiming with it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Sort of talking about the practice itself a little bit. You have, a background, as you said, in film. You use film in a lot of your work. I'm kind of interested. This is just like a question I was wondering. Do you approach film that you use in an installation in the same way that you do documenting the creation? For instance, you have like this nice video and time lapse of the Ubik portal, and I'm sure that we'll have a nice time lapse of this one going as well. Um, do you feel like the film aspect is the same for you? Like, is it its own artistic pursuit as what you would install?
Um, I think the documentation is just for me to remember these
Uh
times.
huh.
And I post some of them up on Instagram just also because I lose them on my hard drive, So it's a way of me remembering. I don't see, no. But however, I do have amazing footage from Ubik, the piece, because I had a camera scanning and recording the environment.
Yeah,
So I have a lot of really amazing interaction of the audiences with the piece,
that's great.
and I haven't figured out yet what to do with these. Are these are gonna fall into documentation, or
I
are they
know.
gonna fall into an art piece? I'm yet to decide with that.
Yeah, that's always. I think, probably the same urge to record so much of the process. In my own artwork, which is, paintings, just stencil and spray paint, I record the whole process almost every single time. And then I look back and it looks boring because it's just, me cutting out a stencil. I'm just at a table for hours. Um, so yeah, finding that time to when do you use it is very interesting.
I'll tell you when I use it. There's a lot of times that, for example, on my last residency here at TAM,
Hmm.
I did buy a lot of material from here,
Uh-huh.
and I didn't document what I bought and
Oh,
what did I use. And it
yeah.
was such the last couple of weeks I was really working hard. So I would just record, the time lapse. And then at a certain point later, I wanted to know what material I was using. So I was going to the time lapse, posing at certain pictures, looking at,
Right, right.
the stuff that I got, trying to zoom in to see if I can see the name.
Yeah, yeah.
But it didn't really work. But I mean, I do try to look at these footage to get,
Yeah.
to remind myself of what I was working with.
Yeah, that's a good instinct, I think, because it's especially with the volume of work that you have is, I barely have any paintings, and I, find one in the closet and oh yeah, I painted this. So I'm sure, at some point you, especially because with the Portal series, they're built, they're installed, they're installations, and it's, even if you rearranged it in the exact same configuration in a different space, it's going to be different.
Different,
Yeah.
exactly.
So did you approach your artwork in a way of it has a set lifespan, or is that just kind of part of the installation process?
I like things to be. I like my work to be ephemeral. I don't like it to live for. I don't like the idea of living forever.
Hmm.
And also another thing to add to that is that the lifestyle in London forces you to somehow try to think about the material really hard that you're using, whether in space, well, like how much space it takes, storage space,
Yeah.
flexibility of moving it, transportation. So I think somehow falling into problems of storage directs me into starting to look into material that I can use that are more flexible, that are
Yeah.
more. And I also learned that it's okay if a piece exists for its own sake at that space. And I like the idea that it was meant to be for this space and this space only and no other space.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of these elements that, although I felt like I was directed to get to through the lack of storage in London and the other issues as artists we face there, but I'm quite glad of the results of that.
Yeah, yeah. It's so impressive, the flexible tubing that's used because it does take up very little space when it's compact.
Exactly.
And then by nature of just expansion, it really comes to life in a new way. So it's been great watching it, be installed here.
Exactly. And I like that contrast between industrial feel and organic feel that it creates once you start moving.
Yeah, yeah. Something that specifically jumps out to me with these works, or I'm sorry, the Take Me to the Seven Seas specifically, is sort of this kind of industrial grate at the end, that it almost, it's an interesting barrier for the portals of the tubes themselves because it allows visibility. You can see inside, but you can't access it.
It's really interesting that you said that because I'm really interested in these spaces that are inviting for everyone, but not specifically for you. So
Okay.
that has that hostile towards you.
Yeah.
I think a lot about these, and I use them a lot. These spikes that they put for pigeons on
Yes.
top of buildings, so they don't stand. So that balcony I have access to everyone except the pigeons, and
Yeah, yeah.
and they do the same for places that they don't want people to jump into on
Right.
top. So there's that. I think that also goes to my background, talking about what comes from your background into your
Right,
work.
right.
These spaces that are inviting for everyone except certain creature or certain people or certain.
Right, right.
So I think that is also within the vents. You see that within the vents, like you can see to the inside, but you don't have that access to it.
What message are you wanting to explain with that? Are you wanting to just make it known? Do you want people to just be aware that these spaces exist, or are you hoping to?
No, I don't have a message from my work
Okay.
for me is I find it great that you were able to see these points and have the feeling that it gives you, and get that out of it.
Uh-huh.
I think that for me is much more important because you will unconsciously be able to see these yourself, and that will give you a better motive to do something about it if you want to do something about it eventually. You know what I mean?
Right.
The work do not preach, do not have a message, but it will be great if it could deliver the feel that I get by exploring these topics.
Yeah, yeah. That's great. So for this show, Special Relationships, it's bringing some great artists from London and then sort of pairing with artists in Los Angeles, so your work can be sort of in conversation with each other. What did you feel coming into this show? Did you specifically channel Take Me to the Seven Seas and that emotion first, or did you explore the topic of the art show itself?
For this show, I was going through the Portal series and I was doing a lot of experimentations. And I think the piece created itself in a way where I told you in that phase, I felt like I was stuck in loops.
Right.
I was stuck physically in the studio, like I was. And so the piece came because of the natural development of the work at the time and where I was at the time.
How do you, whenever you're feeling stuck, how do you work through that? Do you decide I just need to make an art piece and then process through the work? Or do you kind of, take a few weeks and not think about art?
I moved to a different media. I start filming, and this is where I started getting the inspiration to work more on the Take Me to the Seven Seas. Is that I started just filming the tube turning and turning, playing with different speeds, editing and working with that. And this is when things, start coming, and then I start thinking about solution of how to make it happen. So yeah, it's a process. Sometimes I go to drawing or painting, and sometimes I go to the worms, going back to grabbing some worms from the garden and painting, and it just trying to think about it still, but in a different way, from a different perspective. Stepping away from it, but not really totally away from it.
Yeah. I do love, I watched your interview from last year with the Torrance Art Museum advocates, and it was so interesting because I was also surprised when you were describing creating that work. You were making sketches to begin with, but it's large paintings essentially. So I feel like your approach, as you've said, you're working in multiple projects all the time, is to just jump into a different project.
It helps inform the work. Like, I've realized I've always liked working in large scale. I mean, even my paintings, I love working in large scale. But I realized with sculpture specifically, and I knew I was coming to make a sculpture here, the space when I came, it demanded a sculpture,
Right.
So I wanted to make a sculpture. So doing a painting on a large scale helps me figure out the scale that's going to be as a sculpture. Somehow it's closer, so I could see better. So yeah, it's interesting. I love working on a large scale.
Yeah. And speaking of working on different projects, you're also currently working on curating a show at Durden and Ray, one of the nice artist-run spaces here in Los Angeles. How are you channeling these different emotions, like the curator project, and then coming here and also, investigating your emotions every day to create art?
I don't see them as different because I actually use a curation to inform my art. So basically, and I would say in my art, I'm trying to answer questions by myself, but in curation, I threw a question out there to invite other people to come and respond to it, to answer it. And obviously, I get to meet a lot of artists and learn more about their practice. And so that feeds that, and that helps that. And I think, and I love it. And Max and I are curating the show at Durden. We're co-curating, and we're doing these conversation between London artists and American artists. So it's been beautiful to see how people are collaborating. It's exciting. Some of them are jumping to full-on collaborations. Others are having a conversation across continents with topics that are really interesting.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited about it. It's going to be a cool show.
That's so exciting. Yeah. And I really do love the space here at Torrance Art Museum because the shows are, so much more intimate because it is not a huge space. You really get to experience all of the artwork. You can go through it and really digest each individual piece because it's not overwhelming.
I mean, this experience has been amazing because of the conversations the work is having with each other,
Yeah.
And also seeing a lot of the British artists that I'm a big fan of, and I know their work really well, and how is sitting along or even having a conversation with the LA artist. I find that really fascinating and very informative.
Yeah, that's great. For finding and helping, find the British artists, how did you go about that process? Like you said that you know quite a few people in the show, so
It wasn't really difficult because, when I was talking to Max, um, uh, when we were talking about the idea of the show, it came from an idea with some people in mind. So that wasn't really hard. And there was some other people that we needed to invite or to find, to make the show as variable, to cover a lot of the art scene in London and the art scene in LA.
Yeah.
So it was after that a conversation. But yeah, I think the show came in mind with a few people already in mind,
Yeah.
and a few connections already in mind.
I've enjoyed getting to spend time with you these last few weeks.
Me too, Eric. Has been amazing to see you guys in action.
Oh, thank you.
And you did an amazing job around here in the show. Well done.
We're really excited. I mean, it helped so much that you were here to install your work. So you've imparted your, wisdom into take me to the 7 Seas.
Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you so much for,
thank you for having
me.
Yeah. Thank you. It was a pleasure.
I hope you all enjoyed that conversation. Please do like, share, and subscribe the Artscene's channels, either in podcast form or YouTube form. We certainly appreciate it. We're trying to make sure that we can share artists' stories in the artist's own words. And in order to do that, we need help from you to share it with friends and family. We certainly appreciate you doing so. Until next time, bye-bye.